Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again, Mishmash Monday. Wouldn't it be great if the week went as fast as the weekend goes? I mean, it just flies by, doesn't it? Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about today, but the main thing is that one thing that I have to tell you I've really been attracted to over the last couple years is baling wire. And you know, as a kid, I never used it. It was always an old-timer trick, and it was kind of came from the farming industry. And the reason that baling wire was so big with the farmers, and I just found this out, which I found really interesting, is because, you know, a baler was a machine used on the farm to bale hay and straw, things like that. And it was a wire that was wrapped around the material, and that's what it was called, baling wire. Now, that wire, when the farmers would get it, farmers were always frugal and never threw anything out and used whatever they had. So they would cut these pieces of baling wire off the hay bales, things like that, and they would hang them up and use them as needed. And that's why around the farm, so many things were fixed with baling wire, because it was inexpensive and a cheap material that was readily available. So but baling wire really can come in handy, and we can use it for so many things. So I thought we would take a look at it today and talk about it.
Now, the good thing about baling wire is it's very inexpensive and it has so many uses. Now, when we think of baling wire or fence wire, it goes by a bunch of different names. But basically, it's a type of a malleable, which means a bendable wire. It's annealed, which means it comes at a very soft state. So that means you could bend it back and forth, and it won't break. It takes a long time to break this. Unlike some other wires where you bend it once or twice, it snaps. This is made to be bendable, and it's also made to hold a bend. So when you bend it down like this, because there's no temper to it, it doesn't spring back. It'll stay bent just like that. Now, when you're buying a baling wire, it comes in different gauges or thicknesses, and here, this is a 17 gauge along with this, and you can see how thick that is. 17 gauge, and I bought this to make, you ever see those hose clamp, those wire hose clamp that are all the rages? I wanted to make a hose clamp wire maker, so we'll try, maybe we can knock one of those out today. But this here is a little bit thicker. Now, with the gauges, the lower the gauge, the thicker the wire. So 17 is considered pretty thin. A thicker gauge, this is a 16 gauge, so that would be thicker than the 17. And this here, this is a fence wire, and you might see this is really malleable because this stuff is very easily bent. It almost feels like lead, and you see they use this on fencing. I pick this stuff up when I go to flea markets, things like that. Now, sometimes I've been known to need a small piece of wire, and I don't happen, you know, to buy a whole roll of wire. But even though it's not expensive baling wire, it can be, you know, something you don't want to buy right away. For example, who doesn't know of a ball peen hammer at one time or another that doesn't develop this split? It seems like this is a weak area of the ball peen hammer because I've seen dozens. And this one here I just happened to find because I was hoping I have an example that we could try a wire fix on here. But, you know, this is, whenever you have this bend in here, it seems like, going with the grain, that this is a typical place that these ball peen hammers snap. I don't know why, but I've seen dozens of them like this. So we're going to try and fix this with a wire, but I don't want to use something like this, 17 gauge. It's a little bit thick. So I'm going to take some regular wire here. This is a solid core wire. I buy these at a flea market or something. And here I'm going to strip it down because that looks like a nice gauge to wrap around there. So let's strip some of this down, and I'm only going to need a couple feet, maybe 3 feet, and strip off the insulation and get to fixing that ball. Now, whenever you want to strip a wire like this, first of all, you're always going to take longer wire than you need because you never know what's going to happen. So we have about 6 feet of wire here. I chucked up a part of it in Great-Grandpa's vise here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to pull it out and pull it taut, and then we're going to use a utility knife, and we're going to use the utility knife, and you can see here, we're just going to press it across here and make a nice strip across and take off a skewer of here. And then I'll show you then you just have to take the knife, get in between here, and separate the wire. Now, once you separate the wire here, this is the solid core, this is the insulation we already stripped, you can see here. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to pull it apart like this, and until you have a nice clean piece of solid wire. If you're really good, like an orange, you should be able to get it off in one peel like this. And the reason I'm pretty good at this is because when I was a kid, we used to, across the street from me, there was a dump, and they used to dump all kinds of BX and wire and things like that. And what we used to do is we used to go there and take the BX and strip out the wire and then strip the wire, and then we would sell it to the junkies for copper. And so that's what we did for money back then. I mean, can you imagine that? You spend all day stripping down wire just for like $3 or $4 worth of copper. Okay, so here's the game plan. What we're going to do is, you see the crack here, how it runs nice all the way up here. First thing, and you can see, you can open it a little bit with your thumbnail. If you put your thumbnail in there, you see where we're spreading that? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just give it a quick sanding around here, just like this, and lower that area just a little bit, because that's where we're going to wrap the wire. And then, before we wrap it, we're going to fill that crack with glue. Going to fill that with regular wood glue so that it seals down when we wrap it with the wire. But the reason we want to make this kind of level, because when you have a slope, the wire will it's harder to wrap. So we're just going to try and make this area from here to here level. Okay, you can see how we sanded that down a little bit, and you can see it looks very nice. Now what we're going to do, we drilled 2 little holes here. See that one there? And that one there, and that's because that's where we're going to start and end the wire. The wire will enter into there, and we will wedge it in with a toothpick, the tip of a toothpick, and some glue, and that'll hold the wire, and then we will wrap it around. But right now we're going to glue that crack and clamp it first before we wrap it, because we can get a good clamp on there and get it really nice and solid, and then we'll wrap it with the wire. Get the glue in there good. Make sure you open that crack up good with a utility knife, and make sure you get all the glue pressed in there with your fingers. Press all that glue and make sure it's all in there till it oozes out, and then clamp. Okay, while the glue is drying on that, let's start working on that hose clamp mechanism. So let me show you something, first of all, you don't usually see. Let me show you up here in the rafters. Now, up here in the rafters, I have storage of every kind of wood and metal that you could find, that you can think of. PVC. When people used to park in my driveway, they used to take their antenna off there. So these are all antennas from people that parked in my driveway at one time or another. Let's see, we got all kinds of metal. Here's some PVC flutes and pipes and things like that, things for scout projects, old gutters, aluminum, you name it, anything I could fit up here. So you can imagine all the stuff that's up here weighing down the house probably, and all the way down to even arrow shafts and things like that. So this is a great place for storage. So I'm going to look up here and pick out some stock. Okay, here's what I found. This must have been from an old paint roller or something. You know, again, that's good steel to take the inside out. And then I have a piece of a 1/2 inch steel here. So we're going to cut these up and see if we can make a quick clamp. Okay, now we knocked out a prototype, and this is a kind of a variance of the clamp tight, a nice little invention that was made. But you can see what we did here. We just narrowed this down here, put a little notch in the front, and drilled a hole through here. And then we did the same thing. We drilled 2 holes through here. When this passes through, you can see how the holes will line up. And then what you do is you just make a little clamp like this. It's basically 2 half hitches. And let's try it on a piece of PVC and see if it works. Here we are. We got a piece of PVC clamped up in here. And basically, you would wrap this around here while I'm just doing this. This is my first time trying this out. But what you do is you place this here, this little notch, it goes in here. And then these 2 wires will pass through these holes here. And then you can wind it up. Let me show you. Let me get it together and show you what it looks like. Okay, we have it wound up here. Now we're just going to turn this point here until this tightens up. And you can see it's tightening up nicely around here. And you straighten this wire up and get it nice and tight. Now, because this has such a thin, it's only 1/4 of an inch, it can give you tremendous leverage. So when we have it nice and tight like this, then all you do is you just bend it over this way like this. And that's it. Turn this, cut this to here. About 1/4 of an inch, they say, and then you just bend these down like this here, and apparently you're not supposed to be able to feel it. Let me see what it looks like. Okay, you can see here it's it doesn't grab or anything, but and it's a nice tight clamp. But I think that's supposed to go into there. So I'm going to try it the opposite way. And we're going to try it with a piece of hose over it, because that's the way it's supposed to. It's actually for a hose clamp. Okay, so believe it or not, I didn't have a piece of hose around here, so I had to cut a piece of my garden hose off. just because I want the demo. First of all, I want to show you these. You've seen these before. These are these bladed, you can replace the blades on here. And it's like an anvil cutter. They're real nice. That's Cobalt. This is Sears. Craftsman makes this a handy cut. And let me show you how great these work. If you don't have one of these, even if you just use it for garden hose, look at this. Watch how nice that cut. Is that beautiful? And the Cobalt works the same way. You put it here, just give it a quick cut, and look at that. What a nice clean cut. You can make little O-rings or whatever you have to. Get one of these if you don't have them. Even just if you only cut a garden hose one time, it's worth the purchase. Okay, let's try it a second time here. Now what we have is we wrapped it around. Now we have a piece of hose on here, and see how that works. We'll put the notch on that piece here and twist this around. We already started it here, so now we're going to twist it. And again, you can see how it's tightening up really quick and easy, you know. Now I could put tremendous amount of torque on here, but we'll get it to the point where it feels nice, and this hose is not going to press down much. But when we get it to the point where we're right about here, then we'll fold it over like this, and then untwist this, and straighten here. We tuck down the side, and you can see it's a solid. I can't spin it on this pipe. Can't pull it off, obviously. I mean, it's spinning the pipe before I spin it is not turning. So I like it, you know, and considering it's, you know, what's it cost? You know, a couple pennies, but and this tool, how easy is this tool to make? You know, it's just one of those tools, super easy to make. So in closing, we made this little simple device here, and you can see all it is, a piece of 1/2-inch stock, and then a 1/4-inch stock goes in here, and you line up the holes. You can see here that when the wire passes through, and just grind it down a little bit and put a little notch. So, and you can see what a nice job it does. It makes a nice little hose clamp. You know, these are the rage all over the internet now, so I had to make one, and it does work. Very impressive. And finally, we were able to give this old Sears hammer a new life. And the reason we did is because if you look here, the top is so solid. I mean, it's very rarely that you get one that's super solid up there. So we took care of the crack. Believe it or not, I had to cut another piece of wire because this is 16 feet of wire to get it to go that long. So it came out really nice. Put a little red on here, gave it oiling, polish the top, and it just goes to show you a little bit of why I would trust this as much as I would a new hammer, because that is as solid as it's going to get. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed a little baling wire demo today, and have a nice day. Take care now. Bye-bye.